Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today, I've got an exciting guest for us. We've got Elle Russ, who's a best-selling author of the Paleo Thyroid Solution, is also a podcast host for the successful Primal Blueprint podcast with Sisson. She's had a diverse background as an actor, sitcom writer, comedian, and a certified primal health coach as well. So welcome to the podcast, Elle.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Elle, you've had such a diverse background just reading over some of your stuff. You've got a huge list of accomplishments and you seem to be a person that has seized every opportunity, both good and bad. How did you initially get your start in the health coaching space?
Absolute accident, never an intention, actually. So I'm a creative writer, TV and film in Hollywood, also an actor, and was going down that road. And what happened is so essentially, even though it's better now in Hollywood, when I first got here, because of the way that I look, of being sort of in the leading lady category, it's expected that you look like an athlete, that you're a size 2 or a 4. And this was sort of a known thing. And unless you were the fat, funny friend, this is what you had to do. So in the quest for that, I tried to do it the healthy way. I thought, well, instead of go down the cocaine, anorexic, instead of go that direction to lose the weight and be healthy, I'll work out and eat and do all this stuff. Well, in following conventional wisdom, I gave myself hypothyroidism and got very sick as I was following what was said to be the way to do it. And I thought that was the healthy way. And it turns out many years later, it was not. In fact, it was an absolute health problem creating diet and lifestyle. I was over-exercising. I was not eating enough fat. I was doing the low carb, low fat situation, which never works, and eating every 2-3 hours, following that whole 5 small meals a day BS, which we now know is absolutely just crapola. And, listen, I actually achieved the body, meaning I felt like I was ready to show up for these auditions. But at the end of the day, I was dying inside with food addictions. I was freaking out every 2-3 hours, having crazy hypoglycemic drops and rises. I was totally food obsessed and addicted. I had to exercise such extreme willpower that, I thought to myself, all right, well, I got the body. So clearly this must be the way to achieve it, but what a curse, because I can't stop thinking about food. And I thought, well, maybe everyone else who's fit just struggles and doesn't talk about it, or maybe something's wrong with me. I didn't understand why I was suffering here, yet had achieved these results. It didn't make sense. And I didn't know there was another way. And at the time, paleo primal living was just not even out there in the ether for me to research. So to my credit, even if had I looked for it, I wouldn't have found it. So that's really what launched me into a bunch of health problems. And the issue is with hypothyroidism, 60% are undiagnosed. It's an epidemic with 200 million people worldwide. And so I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in the world of anti-aging top doctors. And I could not find someone who knew what the hell they were talking about to help me. And the reason I wrote the book, for those who are listening, is I actually solved 2 severe bouts of hypothyroidism by myself without a doctor, dosing myself, getting my blood work done. And I shouldn't have had to do that. I don't have an MD. I have a philosophy degree. That's not something I signed up for. But you know what? I'm glad I did, because I probably would be dead by now had I not taken my health into my own hands. And so then it just became apparent after a while that, I really needed to get this message out. And I'm the first author to connect paleo, primal, and living with thyroid health. And there really is a true connection there. It's not a gimmick. So, right timing, right space, ended up working for Mark Sisson, had this idea, made the connections. And then he said, I really want to publish a thyroid book because it's a big problem out there. And it really is a crazy epidemic that can be absolutely treated and fixed. But the reason people go undiagnosed and sick for so long, or mistreated on the wrong dose of hormones or whatever it is because doctors are steeped in 30 to 40-year-old outdated thyroid wisdom protocols, just like any doctor. If I went to a doctor right now and he said, you should chill out on your red meat consumption, I'd laugh in his face, because saturated fat is not bad for you. Okay. But back in the day, the old paradigm is, that's what causes heart disease. And it's not. We know that now. It was all wrong. So the same goes with thyroid health. Only the true functional MDs and the people that have gone above their initial MD 30, 40 years ago are the ones that are going to spend an hour, hour and a half with you, are the ones that are looking above and beyond. They're still practicing medicine. How about that for a novelty, you know? And it's the doctors that just go, I learned what I learned 30 years ago. Well, a lot has changed in 30 years, you know? I mean, with everything, right? So there's too many of those uninformed doctors out there. And that's what the problem was for me. Even in Los Angeles, I went to over 24 doctors, went to over 25, spoke with another 25 roughly through email and or phone, and no one would help me. So, you know, that's kind of how I got to where I am. And honestly, once I went paleo primal, it changed my life so drastically. I was compelled to write this book. It wasn't a conscious decision, you know, it poured out of me. So you're just very lucky to be contributing to this space, but also, you know, something that wasn't intended, you know, something that just kind of came up and really jazzed me up in life, and, you know, I've become so passionate about.
Yeah. So how did you actually, like, you've obviously met some incredible people that have pointed you in the right direction, but you've obviously met a fair share of doctors and people that perhaps didn't know and understand the condition that you got. How did you initially discover that it was a thyroid issue and it wasn't, you know, exercise or whatever the doctor was telling you at the time?
Well, I was tested incorrectly so I was undiagnosed for 2 years. Okay. So the doctor would say, your thyroid's fine, just keep working out. I was working out 2 hours a day, eating about 1,000 calories a day, and I was exploding. I was getting fatter by the minute. Yeah. And he was taking a 1973 test that no doctor should ever use to assess someone's thyroid health, and doctors are still doing it. It's called the TSH. It's the bane of every thyroid patient's existence. It's not the measure of thyroid health at all. So let me just get that straight for people who are listening. If a doctor told you you were fine or weren't fine based on a TSH, you saw a moronic idiot doctor who, in my opinion,
is on second opinion.
Get a second, 3, 4, 5 opinions. Yeah. So what happened is I got misdiagnosed with things that I wouldn't have otherwise had. When you're hypothyroid and undiagnosed, because it's a master gland, it affects every area of your life. So you could get a hormonal balance. You could have something show up like irregular periods, things like this. And the doctor is patching and treating all of the different symptoms, not looking at the root of the problem. So that was the biggest issue. It took me 2 years to find out what it was. I at one point thought maybe I have some crazy hormonal issue. I was looking into all this other stuff. And, you know, I was 30 years old. I mean, you know, perfect health my whole life and perfect history of health in my family. So, you know, why wasn't anyone else asking the question, what is causing these symptoms? So number one red flag for myself and the doctor didn't ask it, and I didn't ask it, unfortunately. So, you know, going down this path, I finally went to some famous hormone doctor that I read in some celebrity's book about hormonal issues. It cost me $600 just for the appointment, not even the blood work, for them just to test me correctly and look at me and go, oh my God, you are severely hypothyroid. And I was like, thanks. Took 2 effing years, tons of doctors, misdiagnoses. And then once that happened, I was broke. I had spent $15,000 of my own money out of pocket seeking all of these doctors that didn't know what they were doing. And at that point, I realized that nobody was going to help me but me. And I didn't have the money to go forward with this doctor that diagnosed me. And I said, you know what? All these doctors have hurt me. They haven't been able to figure it out. And clearly, there's no one else that's going to solve this but me. And you know what? I'm really glad I did take my health into my own hands because it worked. So.
Yeah, I've heard you speak about that before, and I really liked just the way you took that, and you say that your advice to other people is take ownership of your health issues, whether it's a thyroid issue, and you should know more about the condition than the doctor.
That's right. Yeah. Well, let's look at this for a second. So let's think about how dumb it is that someone would be told they have a disease and then just go, all right, like, if you were diagnosed with something today, you might want to go online and research the hell out of it, you know, and you should. You really should. And because likely you are actually going to find or learn something that maybe a doctor doesn't know, or what your research will lead you to is finding the correct doctor, because now you know what most don't know and you can gauge who knows what. But how do you even know how to gauge whether a doctor knows what they're talking about unless you have yourself delved into that subject? So my regret is that when that first doctor, I'm having my period every 2 weeks, is total disaster. These things often happen, gynecological issues with women first. So heavy periods, abnormal bleeding, infertility, stuff like that, miscarriages. So, why didn't he ask what's causing this? He just kept giving me the birth control pill to cause the symptoms, but I didn't ask either. Now, to my credit, the information that I'm sharing with you now was not available. So I don't know that I would have found it, but it's available now. So there's no reason for anyone to be ignorant about this topic. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's diabetes or what it is. Stop trusting doctors. Stop putting your health into the hands of doctors. You have to become your own advocate. You have to learn about this stuff. And you know what? To this day, there's a lot of people, even people listening probably, who are on thyroid hormones. They take them every day and they have no idea. They couldn't tell you or me how the thyroid works, what those hormones are doing, or how they work. That's just stupid. So let's stop being stupid. Just everyone stop being stupid. Let's get with the program. Stop trusting doctors. They are your advocate. You can work with them. You need to get on top of it. And the moment you just trust what a doctor says, woof, you know what? You're asking for trouble. I mean, even the very best doctor, because still you should really learn and understand what it is you're going through. And oftentimes you're the best one to gauge that. Your doctor can't be with you every step of the day. You can do home diagnostic stuff. You can give attention to symptoms. And, these are things that you have to track as a patient. So if you really want to, it's like, how badly do you want to get better? How quickly, and that usually comes with self-education.
Yeah, absolutely. Just could you break down for the people that are listening and that might be on thyroid medication, why the thyroid is so important, what it does, and then also what would be the symptoms for women, but also for the few men that might have it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it is disproportionately a women's disease, but men do have it for sure. Yeah. And probably often overlooked as well, because it's not assumed as it might be with women, so there might be more men that are untested. So the thyroid is at the base of if you're a man, it's below your Adam's apple. It's at the base of your neck. It's a gland right here. And what it does is it's the master gland of the entire human body. It is in charge of the production and regulation of all of your sex hormones. It's in charge of the regulation and production of all metabolism, your body temperature to fat burning. And it is the only gland in the entire body that emits a fat burning hormone. Period. End of story. That's why hypo patients, hypo meaning underactive thyroid, who have less of that fat burning hormone T3, get fat. That's a classic symptom, is getting bloated and fat with the inability to lose weight. Now, there are some people that don't experience horrific weight gain. Maybe it's only 7 to 10 pounds. Someone like me, I experience like 50. And I'm short, so 5 feet 2 inches is really tough when you gain 50 pounds. So let me just say this. So everyone has a thyroid gland. Every human being is born with one. It is extremely rare, like 1 in a gajillion, that would be born without a thyroid gland, and you'd have to administer thyroid hormones right away, or that baby is dead. So let's say you had thyroid cancer and your thyroid was removed. You're on thyroid hormones or you're dead. You just can't live without them. If you're on a stranded island and you don't have a thyroid gland and you're without your thyroid hormones, you're not going to survive. You cannot survive without this gland, aka the hormones it emits, and you cannot survive without the hormones. So you don't have to have the gland, but you have to have the hormones for life. It is essential to brain health. That's why, so let's get into some symptoms. That's why when people have underactive thyroid situations, they're often freezing cold. Their hands, their feet, and if you're one of these people because no one else around you is cold and you're the only one wearing a sweater, that person. So that's a really initial indication. For women, anything gynecological. So miscarriages, infertility. Do not attempt to get pregnant until you have tested your thyroid and you're good to go, because why go through senseless miscarriages unless you have to? This happens to a lot of women. Being misdiagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. This happens all the time. It's not that the diagnosis is wrong per se. You could look at the ultrasound gynecologically and go, yep, that is polycystic ovarian syndrome. But what the hell caused it? What caused it? Do you see what I mean? So I was misdiagnosed with that too. Did I have it? No, but temporarily, yes, because if you're in a hypothyroid state, you will get a disease you otherwise would not have gotten. Temperature lowers, everything's sluggish, things aren't being signaled, hormones aren't being produced, they get off balance. This is a cascade domino effect that
and what also are the links with blood sugar as well? I heard you mention it just briefly before.
Yeah. So here's the issues with blood sugar. First of all, because you don't have the energy you need from thyroid, assuming you're hypothyroid and you have low thyroid hormones. So now you're cold. Now everything's slow and sluggish. You're constipated. You don't, when you start eating food, you're not creating enough hydrochloric acid to break down the food, to break down the nutrients. You often get deficient in nutrients. So these things start to break down. Now, in that process, what happens is cortisol, your adrenals, because you're not getting energy in any T3 hormone from thyroid, or if you're misdiagnosed and undertreated with thyroid hormones, you're not getting the energy that you need. So the adrenals will over output because they're going, she needs to get out of bed. So they're outputting cortisol, trying to get you to move. And when that happens, that throws off blood sugar. It's antagonistic to all of that, but it makes you crave carbs and sugar and things like that because, again, your body's like, we need help. And the only help would be that immediate source of crack would be glucose. So often there's horrific sugar cravings and borderline, food disorder type of thoughts about food. I mean, I used to absolutely be in that because you're not really satiated and then you don't really have the metabolic machinery to be processing all of the stuff as well. Often hypo patients have bad cholesterol levels or high blood pressure, and it's not them. They don't need a statin and they don't need blood pressure medication. They need to fix the master controller. It's always there. If you've got anxiety, okay, if you've got bipolar or you've got any kind of depression, right here. We've got more T3 receptors in our brain than anywhere else. They treat depression with thyroid hormones, okay? So any of these ailments, you have to look right here. In fact, any ailment in life, you have to look right here. You have to look at the thyroid first and foremost, no matter what ailment you are dealing with, because that is the master. That's the master.
Yeah.
And getting into symptoms a little bit, I just want to throw that out there. I had over 30, but it does start with cold hands, cold feet. It starts with brain fog, any kind of loss of lust for life, sort of wanting to give up on dreams. What does it all mean? I'm tired of doing this. If you notice a friend being kind of listless in life, someone not taking care of themselves, getting fatter, of course, hair falling out, acne, things happening, particularly the brain. The brain's a scary one for people to admit because people will think I'm getting older, maybe something's wrong with me, and that's hard for them to admit and express, and they just kind of keep it quiet, or they might be thinking, ooh, Aunt Sally had this too, maybe I'm getting a little bit, and it's not that. It's not hereditary, it's your thyroid's off. You know what I mean? So any mental issue.
Age demographic are we talking here?
I mean, anywhere from 10 years old to late 40s, 50s. You can get a thyroid problem at any time in your life. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And just for men as well, you said obviously it's a lower percentage of men, but I think there's just a limited reading I've done on it. A lot of the symptoms suggest low testosterone as well.
Yes,
so
totally.
How would you, obviously if you go to see some doctor and then he's prescribing you testosterone replacement therapy and you're not fixing your thyroid, what's going to happen in that case there?
Well, what you've done in that scenario is go right to the choice of shutting down your own production of testosterone because you're taking it exogenously without ever having given it a shot to come back on its own. Okay. So again, this is the Band-Aid thing. I went to the doctor bleeding. He kept putting me on the pill. You keep going to the doctor with low testosterone. They give you testosterone. If they're not looking at the thyroid, you're with a doctor that's literally mistreating you. So here's how the testosterone. So first of all, symptoms for men too. One of it would be not waking up with erections, starting to have crappy sleep, not waking up with erections. That's a thing. Sorry. It's just, you guys should be having that regularly happening. And if it's not, then that's a red flag. Not being able to recover from exercise and pure exhaustion, which would be like low testosterone related. So any of that stuff, again, I've had low testosterone a couple of times too. Women get it as well when they're hypothyroid. All of the hormones get screwed up. And then once you fix the thyroid, all of the symphony of that stuff and the whole messages comes back and the testosterone goes right back up to the top. I've seen it happen in a 50-year-old from being real crappy because they were over exercising and maybe under eating and they got tired and they were not recovering from exercise and their testosterone dropped. Once they changed their lifestyle a little bit there, boom, right back up to high school levels. And that's a 50-year-old. So So before taking exogenous sex hormones for anyone, you have to look here and attempt this first, especially if you're at a certain age. Now, listen, if you are going through menopause, okay, maybe you're not going to get your normal production of everything back. But short of that kind of situation, it's always worth a shot first. Why wouldn't you want your endocrine system and your hormonal system to work as it should? You don't need to replace unless it's truly a problem. How do you know if it's truly a problem, though? If the thyroid's off, by the way, that person's never going to really feel better. Same goes for Prozac or any of the antidepressants. So because hypothyroidism causes depression, and then you go in, you're like, I'm depressed. The doctor gives you, Prozac or some SSRI. And what happens is it'll work for about 3 months and then it'll stop working. You never address the actual problem. It's not going to get better. The same goes for testosterone. You can give someone all the testosterone they want. That's not the primary fat burner in life. It's not the primary metabolic machinery igniter. So essentially, you give yourself that. But if you're not handling the other things to support it, again, it's a misdirection of solutions, in my opinion there. Yeah.
And what tests would you typically advise for someone to diagnose if you're hypo?
Yeah. First of all, always get tested between like 7:30 and 9 in the morning. If you're on thyroid hormone, you never take it before you go to the test. You pop it in your mouth after the test, or you will get a false result. I'm going to list them off right here. And these are really important because this is a real base. There's a million tests you can do here. There's things that affect thyroid like heavy metals or Lyme's disease or lots of other things. But let's just talk about a basic panel to see if you're effed up, and then you can go and delve into all the deeper subjects around that. So you want to get tested for free T3. That's free as in freedom. So free T3, free T4, TSH, and then you want to get reverse T3. So those are 4. Now, you also want to at least once or twice in your life eliminate the possibility of Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid issue. And those 2 antibodies are TPO-AB, stands for thyroid peroxidase antibody. And the other one is TGAB, which stands for thyroid globulin antibody. You want to get both because some people are positive for one and not the other, or both. And it's important to know this because if you have Hashimoto's, you have a different trajectory of eating and lifestyle and some other things that a person who didn't have Hashimoto's would have to worry about less. So it's really important to distinguish if you have that as well. So those are the basics. Now, there's some related ones as well, like DHEA sulfate. That's a adrenal hormone, an anti-aging hormone that, decreases in our 30s, something usually people supplement with anyway in their late 30s, moving on as an anti-aging hormone. B12, very important. Ferritin, extremely important. Ferritin, Ferritin, is iron storage. It is often low in hypo patients, male or female. And unless it is at the right optimal levels, no amount of thyroid hormone you give a person will ever work. And nothing will work in terms of trying to get back your thyroid production naturally. So this is a hidden one that is really important to this whole picture, because if you don't have proper iron storage, the thyroid hormones, whether you're taking them or whether they're coming naturally from your own production, will not get to where they need to go to affect the cells. So and if you're starting thyroid hormone and you have low ferritin, you can't sort of increase in the proper way because the body can't handle it and you will get adverse symptoms. And literally it's an extremely important factor. So ferritin is really important. Vitamin D, often hypothyroid patients are very low in this. So just as a baseline, ferritin usually has a reference range of 10 to 150, let's say. In that 10 to 150 range, you want to be between like 50 and 90. For vitamin D, the range is usually like, I don't know, is it like 0 to, I don't know what, over 100. You want to be between like 70 and 90 for vitamin D. And often patients are like 30, really low. Or if your ferritin is below 50, you really need to think about supplementing with iron to get that up. So those are like some basic tests that are not very expensive that you can do to kind of assess what's going on. Then, of course, there's so many deeper forays, like heavy metals. Do you have silver fillings in your mouth? Those will absolutely F with mitochondrial function, weight loss, and thyroid. So yes, you can go down a million avenues to discover all of these aspects, but that's the basic to really determine. And frankly, you can do a cheap one without doing blood tests. That's just taking your temps at home, basal and afternoon. And that can really you can almost self-diagnose a thyroid problem that way.
Yeah. So what if you had someone who had a perhaps not the best lifestyle, maybe didn't have the best nutrition as well, and they got these tests done? Would you intervene with the lifestyle and nutrition first, and then go down the path of taking exogenous thyroid hormone, or would you? How would you go about something like that if you had someone who wasn't necessarily doing all the right things?
Well, it depends on how bad the labs were and how long they've suffered. So, for example, the other day there was a woman who had a little bit of a subpar thyroid, just a couple points below what's normal can really affect someone. Now, in her situation, because it's not horrific at this point, it behooves her to try a natural protocol with some supplements, selenium, some other thyroid support stuff, lifestyle, and hit that for 6 to 8 weeks and see if things improved, right? Why not do your best to see if it can come back? However, there are people, if you have zero T3 and T4 levels and you're a total mess and you've been there for a while, that might be the case where you would go right to thyroid hormones. And it's not to say that that person wouldn't be able to get off them one day, but because they're so metabolically frozen and inefficient, literally, they're suffering and they're creating more disease states in the body. So in that, it would be like, for example, I spoke to someone recently who had zero T3, zero T4. They had zero. And their TSH was 156, which means the brain was screaming like, hey, this person's dying. They need thyroid hormones. In that case, you got to go directly on thyroid hormones almost like right away. It's like, how long do you want to wait to get better? Now, I don't suggest anyone jump on them right away. I think you should always attack with a, paleo primal protocol, start cleaning out all of this junk that affects this in the wrong way, and do your best to go down that road. Selenium is key for people. There's a great product that I love from Gaia Herbs called Thyroid Support. That has some ashwagandha and some tyrosine and some selenium in there and some seaweed. And, that you could do all sorts of things to get the right nutrients going to help support you. Selenium deficiencies can cause a thyroid problem. So can low ferritin. Sometimes it's just a matter of being a menstruating female, working out and losing more iron than most. And your ferritin got so low and then your thyroid got screwed up and all you need is some iron. I mean, literally, or it might even just be, oh my gosh, you've had lack of sleep and you've been stressed going through a divorce. And it's a matter of just getting sleep and chilling out on the exercise. This stuff can really turn it around because this whole thyroid system reacts to the messages we send it in every way. That's why people have miscarriages. So let me go through that one. So let's say, your thyroid's low for whatever reason. Maybe you're training for a marathon, you're skinny, you're not eating right, and you're over-exercising, and that could be considered as like a total stressful threat to your body. Or you just have low thyroid hormones, you're going to have the miscarriage because the body is saying, we're not going to allow her to get pregnant and carry this baby to term because she can't afford to right now. Either A, she's the runner that's skinny that doesn't have enough fat on her body and she's starving. So therefore we got to wait till she's, not running from danger and she gets enough food. Or it's just literally there's too low of thyroid output for whatever reason. And that is why women often have multiple miscarriages when they don't have proper thyroid status or can't get pregnant. So again, this is all about your body's trying to save you at any given time, all the time. And that's part of it, trying to save you. It's trying to help you, saying, you can't afford to have a baby right now. We're not going to let this happen to you. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. So what messages are you sending it? And the form of overexercise and the way that we eat and fluctuating blood glucose levels are so contraindicated towards thyroid. So, and let me explain that a little bit. So it's not about, oh, I got fat when I was hypothyroid and now I'm going to go paleo to lose the weight. That is totally part of it. But the bigger part of it is that paleo primal living, the lifestyle, and actually if you truly get into it, is the ultimate in adrenal management and the ultimate in blood glucose management. Those are both optimal for testosterone, for muscle sparing, protein sparing, for everything you want in life. And it absolutely connects with thyroid health. So it's more than just about, oh, you got fat, you were hypothyroid, now you're fixed, you can lose some weight. It's about not running into these problems ever and not running into them again, because you could go on thyroid hormone and sort of feel good. But if you're still on that lifestyle, that thyroid hormone could backfire on you. You can actually be hypothyroid while you're on thyroid hormones if they are not getting metabolized and converted in the way that they should. And the only thing that is at the base of that is this primordial baseline that is your choice, mouth to anus. and activity as to what you do to support it. So everyone should be, especially if you're concerned about your brain being on fire and fat burning, you should be concerned about taking care of your thyroid, whether you have a problem or not. You know what I mean? And so paleo primal living in this lifestyle is the ultimate in supporting the health of your thyroid. They actually go together naturally. It's not some gimmick that I invented. It's just science, how it works. So.
Yeah. And what type of nutrition for hypothyroidism? I know obviously primal living, the paleo stuff that Mark typically recommends, but are we talking low carb? Are you talking ketogenic? Like what sort of extremes or what would the baseline for someone who is in hypothyroid?
I would start off with like the 21-day Primal Blueprint, just trying to clean out the bad stuff. It's a low carb paradigm, but it's, for anyone, basically, unless you're a bricklayer or an NBA athlete, you should not be eating more than 150 grams of carbs a day. If you're a small woman like me, you need to maybe start about at 100 grams and go a little bit lower. When you start to get below 50, you can get into ketosis. This is not recommended for people with hypothyroidism. Here's why. It is just a losing game. You're trying to light a wet log. It's not going to work. And in fact, a high-fat diet while you're hypo, again, you're hypo. You're not processing fat. You're not burning anything. So now you're going to what? Try a high-fat, low-carb paradigm? Paleo primal, still high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb. But if you're hypo, you might have to mitigate the fat a bit or just be okay with the fact that until you fix this hypothyroid problem, being hypothyroid is having the worst metabolism ever. So it doesn't matter if you work out 800 times a day. You're going to get fatter. And it's insane and it's counterintuitive because you think you have control over this and then you're getting fat and you want to try to get ahead of it. But every time you go to the gym, now you're outputting the adrenals, you're getting more adrenal fatigue and you're getting fatter and it's not working. You have to stop. It's like taking 5 steps behind after 2 steps forward. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So hopefully that answered. I don't know if I need to add more to that.
Awesome. I heard you spoke about before the morning temperature tests to basically diagnose or to identify possible thyroid issues. What's the science around that, and what are the red flags, I guess, for the numbers?
Mm-hmm. So what's the science behind it? Every single human being has an average temperature.
Yeah.
As human beings. And that average temperature usually in the afternoon for every human being is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 32 Celsius. I won't do the conversion now and screw it up, but it's 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Why is that? It's a Goldilocks situation, not too hot, not too cold, right? And why is that? Because we have enzymatic processes and things in our body, organisms that require a certain temperature to live. And I'm sure lizards have a different baseline temperature as well as other animals, but our species as humans, we have an average temperature in the morning and in the afternoon. And here's what it is. So morning, meaning you have not even sat up in bed, you have not left the covers, your thermometer is right there next to the bed. Under the tongue, 7 to 10 minutes, not digital. Anyone can go to Stop the Thyroid Madness website is the best thyroid website out there. It's a fellow author friend of mine. She details how to do the temps. You can just go to the website, or it's in my book as well, but you could just go to the website.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so you can get this information for free. But essentially, the way to do it is you have the temperature next to bed. You don't even get out of bed to go to the bathroom. Nothing. The alarm goes off. You put it under there for like 10 minutes. It's a bulky thermometer. You can use the old school mercury kind or not digital. You can use something called the Geratherm thermometer, which looks like the old school thermometer with the little metal ball at the end, and you have to shake it down, every time. So you do that. Now, your basal should really be between 97.7 and 98.2 or 97.8 and 98.3. So if you were over 98.3 or towards the top, you might be hyperthyroid, meaning you have an overactive thyroid because you're too hot in the morning or you're on too much medication. If it's under 97.7 or under 97.8 consistently, you likely do have a hypothyroid issue. Okay. And then you take it in the afternoon around 3:30, half an hour, just chill in there. You don't have to be laying down for that one, but that's one where you don't want to run up a flight of stairs, take your temps, eat, smoke, whatever. Just, chill out, do the same thing. if that is consistently below 98.4. Now it's okay. Look, if it's 98.5, 98.4, all right, within a couple of points, not so bad. But if you are consistently low, so for example, when I was hypothyroid, I was always 96 degrees no matter what. Now, here's the thing. Some people who are on thyroid hormone might feel too hot and then they think like, or they might feel chills and think that they're actually cold and need more thyroid hormone. This is a big mistake. Take your temps, okay? Because you could have a fever and then your body generates the chills and you think you're cold and really you're on too much thyroid hormone and you're hyper, okay? Yeah. So no one should ever guess at whether they're too cold or not. There is a cheap diagnostic $3 way to figure out what is the truth, and that is only taking your internal temperature. So you do that twice a day, you do it for 5 days, and you look at that. You know, most people are at about 97 something or below in the morning if they're hypothyroid. In the afternoon, some people might never even get above 97 or 98. You know what I mean? So the other reason to take the temps is if you're on thyroid hormones and you go down the road, usually with thyroid hormones, you don't just take your optimal dose right out of the gate. You take an intro dose, test 3.5 weeks later, assess something out, then you might do another increase, and you kind of go along this road for a couple months until you reach your optimal dose. Testing temps is extremely important in here because you might be at a point where you're like, I feel great. Wow, I'm feeling better than I ever did before. I think this is my dose. I think I fixed it. But you might be needing a little more, a little less, or you're not sure. And in that case, doing temps at that point is really valuable as well. Because if you're a little subpar, you might have a little room for a quarter grain of desiccated more, or just, the tinkering also is valuable. The other thing too is, usually when people reach their optimal dose of thyroid hormone, they kind of don't need to change it. It stays consistent, but you would check it maybe before winter and spring because you might need a little bit more in winter and a little bit in spring. So if you're ever on thyroid hormone and you feel something's off, whether you feel you're on too much or you're on too low or something's wonky, you go right to the temps. It's just an automatic. You don't even have to go to the doctor. Just go right to the temps. And let's say the temps are too high. Then at that point, as a patient, you might go, you know what? I'm going to make an appointment with my doctor and I'm going to decrease my dosage a little. See what I'm saying? So these are home diagnostics that are forever available and applicable.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to ownership again. And you rather than just putting all your faith in the doctor, you start to get an idea of what's going on yourself. So you're getting that sort of biofeedback. Now, you just spoke about just before the hyper. What are some of the symptoms if you had, say, a high temperature in the morning and the afternoon?
Yeah, well, hyperthyroidism, I mean, assuming that's not an infection and that like you have Lyme's disease and that's why I have a fever or something. But if you're too hot, so these are the symptoms of hyperthyroidism. Pooping a lot, like extra bowel movements. Again, metabolism's really fast, might even have an increased appetite, weight loss. Now, I want to throw this in there because a lot of people go, ooh, so if I just take T3, then I can burn all this fat. And bodybuilders do that and they screw up their thyroid. Here's why you don't want to do it. It'll backfire. This is a Goldilocks situation, not too hot, not too cold. Eventually, when you actually go down the road of taking T3, or anything with T3 in it, if you take too much, you're going to get inflamed and bloated and actually get fatter. Okay. So it is not logical, like most people would think, I'll just take this powerful fat burner and then burn all the fat I want. No, now you've got increased temps. Now you've got inflammation. Now, again, all the enzymatic processes are off because your temperature's too high. Okay. Yep. So clammy, sweaty, bulging eyes, agitation, sometimes even exhaustion, because you can get too up and then you're down because it can really mess with cortisol and adrenals and blood glucose. It might feel good at first, like you're like, wow, okay, I'm on fire here. But essentially you'd also have an elevated, not normal resting pulse. So for example, I was on too much medication at one point and I was hyperthyroid. I wore a continuous heart rate monitor on my wrist. I would wake up and my pulse would be like 95. That's not appropriate for someone my age who works out like I do, who's healthy like I am. That's not right. So another diagnostic tool I'm a huge fan of along this process is getting to know your heart rate. Get to know what's right for you. I still use it. So for example, one of the ways I can tell if I'm on too much and need to decrease at any time, because I'm on T3 only, which is rare, is if my resting pulse is like way too high, and it'll come along with some of the symptoms of hyperthyroidism. Same goes for way too low of a pulse. And then that will come with the exhaustion and dips. So that's another good diagnostic tool. And you should kind of know where you are and where you should be. And over time, I just think that that's another great diagnostic tool to get to know your heart rate.
Yeah. Would you say that males would be generally more susceptible to the hyperthyroidism, or is that incorrect?
It's not necessarily the case. However, there are people, if you have no weight problems and like you're actually like one of those people that can't gain a lot of weight, if you have any kind of anxiety, like you can't handle caffeine or, like you're prone to any kind of anxiety, you might want to get your thyroid tested because you could be a little bit more elevated than most. And that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. That means you have very efficient metabolism, but that also would mean that perhaps you wouldn't want to use a lot of stimulants and things like that. Yeah. Look, there's people that are blessed with that. I have a friend who probably can eat all they want. They're very fit and their T3 levels naturally are above the mid-range a couple of points. Like they have pretty damn good metabolism. But one of the things they struggle with is anxiety. And then they can't, drink caffeine or anything like that because it's too much. Yeah. So that can be a little bit of a sign. It's not necessarily means that you have hyperthyroidism, but it means go check it out. So yeah, sweaty, clammy hands, it also could be hair falling out and other hypothyroid symptoms. But for the most part, you would know because it's a level of agitation and your heart's kind of pounding and it's sweaty and something's definitely off. You definitely feel it.
Yeah, definitely. So we spoke about before how, and I've heard you speak about how it's hard to find doctors that are going to sort of dig deeper and sort of find out the issues. What would be some of your tips and questions that you'd ask the doctor, and how would you go about finding a functional medical practitioner?
Yeah. Well, first of all, anyone can email me through the contact form on my website and just say free thyroid info. And I send you everything, how to find a doctor, even outside of the US, what questions to ask them, what tests to get, like everything. But for right now, so anyone can get that information from me for free. It's important you can always call and find out, does the doctor routinely test free T3 and reverse T3? If they don't, they're a moron. If they test free T3 but not reverse T3, that might still be a better choice than a doctor who only tests TSH. You never want to go to a doctor that only tests TSH. And by the way, everyone thinks endocrinologists are the people to go through for thyroid health because endocrine is in the name of their title. They are the worst. They are the absolute worst. I warn everybody against going to endocrinologists. You have to really beware. They are the most entrenched in ego, and they are the most entrenched in 40-year-old outdated protocols, and they don't test the right stuff. So you really want someone who understands that testing free T3 and reverse T3 are important and to know how to assess that. I would really look into functional medicine doctors. If you're going to solve this problem, usually those are the people that know more than most. DOs, anti-aging doctors, functional medicine doctors, even integrative physicians. These are going to be the ones that are more knowledgeable than just a regular doctor about this stuff who's using 40-year-old. Also asking a doctor, does the doctor prescribe Synthroid and natural desiccated thyroid for patients? If they only prescribe Synthroid, don't even bother going to the doctor. They don't know what they're talking about. Again, it's really about, calling and finding out before you waste that money on that visit to know if they already know. You can suss it out through their nurse and ask some questions to see if they know what's up. Now, some people you can just use for blood tests. If you're a patient and you're armed with the knowledge, who cares if they know? Just go in, get what you need to get with blood work, which might be a fight. There's a lot of doctors. I had a patient who requested all of these tests I just told you on this podcast. And the doctor goes, excuse me, why do you want me to test all of these things? And it's just like, wow, the fact that he asked that question, you're a moron. You're a moron who knows nothing about thyroid health and should not be treating people for thyroid problems. If you're even asking that question as a doctor. It's insane. I just had a person the other day who said, I got my thyroid tested, everything's fine. And I go, really? I doubt it. I will make you a bet for $1 million right now that your doctor only tested your TSH. And I was right. and I'm almost right every time. And that really pisses me off because that should not be the case. So now we just had to go get her tested for all of the direct results. And I'll be honest with you, based on her symptoms, I guarantee she's going to come back. She's going to be hypothyroid. And so now there we have another doctor who was just willing to let a bunch of patients go in and out that revolving door. Nope, your thyroid's fine. Nope, your thyroid's fine, because they're using a 1973 test.
Yeah.
Shoot me, right? You know what I mean? It's very frustrating for patients because then you find out your doctor's an idiot. That's never a fun day. You feel betrayed when that moment happens. You're like, what? You have an MD from Harvard? How could? And then you feel so hurt. And you're like, that's part of this process, is really dealing with getting over the fact that your doctor might not know everything and being angry that they should. And, it's just they learned what they learned 30, 40 years ago, and they're like anyone else. I want my doctor, the doctor on my book, Dr. Forsman, who's now my doctor. I want everyone to have a doctor like him, someone who geeks out, is totally excited about finding the answer, is still one of those medical nerdos that was in medical school. That's what you want. You don't want the guy that gave up after getting the MD and he's like, whatever, and he's not learning anything new. This is the practice of medicine, right? So you want someone who's practicing this stuff. You also really want a doctor who's not in the hands of insurance companies, because they're going to spend more time with you and be willing to practice further and do more testing. So those are really the best doctors out there. And again, anyone who is going to say whether you are have a thyroid problem or not based on just the TSH has zero idea what they're talking about. You run from that doctor. You need at the very least TSH, free T3, and free T4, and really free T3, free T4, TSH, and reverse T3. Those four are a must. So you got to get them however you got to get them, or you could be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, awesome answer. In one of your previous interviews, which I found fascinating, you spoke about how there's a link between acupuncture and chiropractic adjustments and your thyroid. Could you just explain this for the listeners that might not have heard you on that interview before, and the potential mechanisms for that?
Sure. Well, while I'm not a chiropractor, there are... If you have some stagnant blockages, in your spine, some of them in the neck relate to thyroid. They have like C2, C1, there's different names for them. And there's a few that, if they're off or not in an alignment, can really cause thyroid problems. There are people that have actually fixed thyroid issues through going to a chiropractor, and also acupuncture. So acupuncture is like 3,500 years old. What I think it's great for a million things, but what it's particularly great for is hormonal balance for females and males. So again, there might be some help there that could help the entire system. It's not to say that it's going to work, but it's definitely an option, has worked before. And it's about, what do you want to invest in this? What route do you want to go down first? You know what I mean? Obviously find a really great chiropractor. People are adjusting your spine and your neck. You clearly want a super pro in that situation.
You want to trust them.
You want to really trust them. I also feel like going to an acupuncturist who is Chinese, who's studied in China, is probably important. You really want to get to the best of the best there. So all of that can absolutely help and can turn things around. That's not to say you still can't avoid the lifestyle changes you have to make as an individual as well. I don't think any amount of chiropractic work is going to help if you still are eating a certain way, sending the wrong messages to your thyroid. But it absolutely can help. And it's again, worth delving into if you're interested in that. And it's just another avenue. Hey, look, same goes for heavy metal testing. High mercury is an absolute jerk when it comes to thyroid and weight loss, and it can cause reverse T3 problems, meaning it can cause your own thyroid medication or your own thyroid hormone to not convert and keep you hypothyroid when there's no reason that it should. So again, you can go down that road, get tested for heavy metals. Do you have silver fillings need to be replaced in your mouth? I had to do that. And so again, there's a million avenues of exploration here. It's just which one is your choice for starters,
Yeah. Awesome. So just shifting gears, we're getting towards the end of the interview now. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions more on yourself. Who sort of mentors you? I think you've obviously been fortunate to work with talented doctors and people like Mark Sisson. Is there someone you specifically model yourself on?
Gosh, well, in this community, there is Mark Sisson and Brad Kearns. Brad Kearns is Mark's writing partner often. He's the head of our publishing company. Mark Sisson is absolutely my hero. I mean, and he would say, "Oh, don't do what I do what Grok would do." His name for this, like,
Yeah.
primordial hunter-gatherer. Meeting Mark saved my life. It changed my life. Dr. Forsman, actually finding a doctor for my book and finding Dr. Forsman also changed my life because, wow, I had been my own doctor for many years. When I found him for the book, I thought, I want him to be my doctor. And then when he discovered a ton of things that were off that needed to be corrected that no amount of diet and lifestyle could fix. And he saved my life. So I really feel Mark Sisson, it's not just that he's a mentor for the information he has shared and provided. He is an amazing boss, an amazing dad. He is such a no bullshit guy. He is hilarious too, like really, really funny. And, you can kind of say anything to him. You don't have to edit yourself. Mark's just and just as far as a businessman as well, like what he's created from being a personal trainer, making probably 40,000 a year to multi-million-dollar incredible contributive food company to the paleo primal world, Primal Kitchen. So I'm always learning and admiration of him all the time. And honestly, I've worked for Mark for about 6 years now, and I have never heard anyone say what I'm about to say, which I have said every day for 6 years, which is I love my boss. Like there's not a lot of people out there that really feel that way. And I am a no BS person. I wouldn't even bother saying that on this podcast. I don't need to kiss anyone's ass. I'm not that kind of person anyway. It's just really an incredible space to be where you love so much the person you're working for and with, and, not to mention just believe in his message. And it's transformed my health, but I just think he's a great example of an incredible man, just a man. He's a man that also, supports women beyond belief. I mean, he hired a 32-year-old woman to run his Primal Kitchen company and start off with a Mayo. And now look at them. They're unbelievably successful and huge. And he encourages women and promotes them. And so there's that aspect to him as well. And he's just very open-minded. And, I could go on, but honestly, he's really, and we all feel that way about him. He's kind of like the dad we all wish we had, or like sort of a surrogate dad in a lot of ways, because he's so much fun. So I'm constantly learning from him. And I also really do appreciate Dave Asprey and Rob Wolf. I appreciate Evan Brand, who's a functional guy as well, who has a show called like Not Just Paleo podcast. There's just a lot of people in this space I really like. There's a doctor in Tennessee named Ken Berry who I've gotten to know recently. And what I like about him is he's one of the doctors that has come out on YouTube and fallen on his own sword and said, "Oh my God, I probably contributed to people's deaths because I didn't know better, because I was trained this way and we didn't know." That takes a lot for someone to punch their ego like that and admit that to the world. And the more and more doctors we get out there that are going to get educated like that, who are going to come out and go, "Hey, I didn't," even Dr. Forsman, his book said, we didn't know better until people weren't getting better and we started to look ourselves. Thank God they started to look themselves and they learned. But most doctors, again, are still entrenched in the outdated 30, 40-year-old protocols of diet, nutrition, and thyroid health. And so a lot of these people in this space that are showing up really inspire me. So
yeah, that's a great answer. What's the best advice you've been given? And this doesn't have to be specific to your thyroid or your health, but just in general.
Take your mouth with you.
Yeah.
It's something my mom used to always say to me that her grandmother used to say to her, and I'm not sure where that expression came from. Take your mouth with you, meaning speak up. You got to speak up in all areas of life. This doesn't matter if it's, "Hey, you didn't take the right blood test, doctor," or whether it's, "Hey, no, actually I do deserve a raise." It doesn't matter what the situation is. You have to speak up. No one is going to do it for you. And it builds self-worth and self-confidence. And it's something that my whole entire life, I'm so grateful, especially being a woman. Listen, with all of the rights that we have in the States, we're still often in a boys' game. And we're dealing with men. And sometimes if you have a man that says no to something or is adamant about something, there's a lot of women that might cower and say, okay, and just sort of cower under that powerful alpha sort of presence. You have to be able to stand up and go, "Actually, no, I disagree." So these are things that you're not going to get anywhere in life, no matter who you are, male or female, unless you speak up. And so, gosh, we could talk an hour just on that alone, but that's probably the best advice ever. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic advice, and I think it's obviously worked out pretty well for you, just by listening to your
Maybe
mum.
taking it too much with me, maybe.
Not at all. So, what are you currently working on at the moment? Obviously, you've got the book out, which I'll link to in the show notes. But
Yeah.
what's in store for you for the next
Well,
12 months?
yeah, well, I'm going to record the audiobook version, which I need to get out, and then also likely going to do a thyroid course. I've gotten did a lot of coaching, and I can work with individuals, but it's going to be better to just do a course that people can buy to give them specific, just go through every chapter of my book, give specifics on dosing, have experts like Mark and Brad and other people in the space like Dr. Kate Shanahan talk about paleo primal health as well. So working on a comprehensive web course for thyroid health to help people, instead of being able to just individually speak with me. And then also, I mean, I have a award-winning documentary that's probably on its way out soon, in the creative sphere. I also have another book that I'm writing that has nothing to do with actual physical health as much as mental health, sort of a self-help, self-development type of book that I'm working on. So honestly, I have this wonderful problem of having so many things I want to do. And I feel really lucky for that. Sometimes it's overwhelming because you're like, what do I do first? And oh my God, there's so much. So there's just not I have a million more ideas I can throw down here. But yeah, never a shortage for me. So just really exciting.
Oh, awesome. And I'll link to all your social media and your website in the show notes. We're just at the end of the interview now. I've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you. They don't necessarily have to be quick answers, but you just let us know as you go. So the first question is, what's your all-time favorite book? Can be nutrition, self-help.
Confederacy of Dunces, no question about it. Confederacy of Dunces is my favorite book on planet Earth. It is the most hilarious book I've ever read in my life. It won the Pulitzer Prize many, many years ago. The author won the Pulitzer Prize dead. So his book was found after he died. They published it, and it is literally known as one of the funniest books ever. If you're a fan of comedy, like I am, Confederacy of Dunces. In fact, I can't wait to reread it. It's one of those. So that's my favorite book of all time, probably.
Okay. Well, I'll have to get that one. Do you have any quotes that you live your life by?
Yeah, a lot. Well, I love Henry Ford's, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Either way, right? So what you focus on, you get more of, right? That's kind of what that's about. The other one I really like is something I heard not too long ago. And again, I'm not sure who said it. It might be one of those like ancient philosopher quotes. No one knows who said it, but no one ever built a statue to a skeptic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Got a lot of negative Nancy's out there in the world. People need to stop being downers. Okay. And so one of those things I bring up when people are like, oh, I'd love to do that. But the hard thing is, and I'm like, oh man, think about it. No one ever built a statue to a skeptic, because who's going to walk by that statue and go, look, kids, there's a guy that never believed in anything. Look, kids, we're honoring this guy who thought everything was a bunch of BS, never thought, right? Right. We only build statues to people that actually, right or wrong, doesn't matter. They believed in something. They had a vision, right? They believed in it when no one else did. Okay. Yeah. So I'm tired of skeptics. Those are people that are just going to be victims in this world, in my opinion, and everything's going to happen to them. You know what I mean? So no one ever built a statue to a skeptic. Just remember that.
That's a good one. What do you do for fun on the weekends? Like, obviously into all the health stuff, but is there something you do that's outside of your work scope?
Oh yeah. I mean, I live in Southern California in Malibu. It's beautiful here all the time. So we have a lot of outdoor year-round fun. Stand-up paddling on the ocean or reservoirs and lakes is really fun. I love hiking. I go on long hikes all the time with friends. I love swimming. So those activities. Actually, Mark Sisson throws a bunch of good parties at his house. So occasionally there's one of those. Actually, there's one of those happening this weekend. Yeah, it's a lot of hanging out with friends, barbecuing, chilling. We go to the farmer's market here. We hang out. I'm kind of past my club days, although occasionally I go dance it up at a club. But for the most part, it's kind of chilling and hanging with friends and, going out to movies and restaurants and stuff. So other than the sports activities, yeah.
Yeah. The final question is, if you could jump in a time machine and give yourself advice when you started initially, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, What advice would you give yourself?
I would give my advice to start looking into the power of the subconscious mind and intention, because I wish I would have known about that way of being sooner. I guess what I would probably say is, like, you have nothing to worry about. Life is going to kick ass. Don't worry, But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't have any regrets, so while hypothyroidism really took 6 years of my life, I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't take that back for the experience, for the knowledge I gained, and for the ability to help thousands of people that I've been able to help. I wouldn't take that back. Every time someone calls me and says, "Thank you, you saved my life," or something, it makes every one of those 6 years I spent inside crying, miserable, bloated, life just totally effed up. It makes it all worth it to me, So there are no regrets. I wouldn't go back and change anything differently, So
it's a great answer. Where's the best place for people to get in contact with you?
Just go to my website, elleruss.com, ELLERUSS.com. You can always just use the contact form and go, "Hey, free thyroid help, please." And I'll just send you a ton of free information to get on the right path. You don't have to buy my book. The reason I do that is because, like I said, I spent so much money. Everything costs so much money. I'm happy to give people a ton of free information right now to get on the right path. You don't have to buy my book. I mean, it's the cheapest, best thyroid book out there. I will say that, but you don't need to do that. Selling books is great. I want to help people get over this stupid problem that's absolutely fixable, by the way. So anyone listening, it doesn't matter how long you've been struggling, when you got diagnosed, how long you've been on thyroid hormones, even if you're still feeling like crap, this is solvable. So don't let any doctor tell you just because you have X, you're going to suffer from this. It's fixable. And I want everyone to know that, because there are doctors who don't know what they're talking about, who will tell a patient, "Well, you're always going to have to struggle with weight because you have this problem." No, that's not true. You're a doctor who's not treating them properly and not allowing them to have the right metabolism to even lose the weight in the first place. So I just want everyone to know that, perseverance pays, and also this is fixable.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a fantastic interview. I've learnt a lot myself, and really, really grateful that we're able to share this interview and share it with my listeners as well.
Thank you so much. Really, really glad to be a part of your audience.